All right. Welcome, fam, to the off season. We are amidst it, yes. And I have an esteemed panel of playoff teams. And then there's me. So we're going to go through today. We love to talk about some free agency moves. Some of you may have been paying attention to it. Some may not have. But basically, the free agency period has gone on for about, I believe, 2 weeks now. A lot of big moves, a lot of teams doing some big things. And so we kind of want to touch base on it here, just to chat about it, see how it impacts fantasy football, and see how it impacts maybe our league in particular. So what I'm going to do is hop right into some teams that have made some big moves so far. I'm going to start off with the New Orleans Saints. Basically, they end up signing Derek Carr, which was a huge, probably the biggest quarterback move so far of the year. We have a couple that aren't signed yet, but that's probably the biggest move was getting Derek Carr there. I don't know if you guys have an opinion on what that's going to do for their offense or not this year. But how do you feel like Derek Carr could be an upgrade for them based on what they had last year?
I'll start if you want. I don't see Derek Carr making much of a difference, but it also depends on what team they get to field. Something everyone should keep in mind: Alvin Kamara very well may not play this year. He might be suspended. That's a big deal. That's
Yep.
why they picked up Williams.
Yep.
So Michael Thomas coming back on a friendly deal. That's good for them. And they have Olave, so he's a young talent. So I just don't know if Derek Carr is the guy that's going to get him there. I like Derek Carr. I mean, he's okay, but
Yeah.
I
He's
just don't think
serviceable.
he's, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. I don't think he's any of that. So
Yeah.
He's better than Andy Dalton.
he is better than Andy Dalton. He is
Let's just
better
put
than
it that
Andy Dalton.
Yeah, and that may be one of those where in a sense, it's not Derek Carr that you want, but it's, hey, I feel better about Chris Olave now
Right.
because Derek Carr is throwing the ball instead of Andy Dalton. Because I know when Jameis Winston was throwing the ball, you got a lot more deep balls to Olave, which he was great at. And then once Andy
Mhm.
Dalton came in, you didn't get as much of that. So that's something that maybe Derek Carr can help with. And you're right about Alvin Kamara, could be suspended anywhere from the whole year to as little as maybe 4 games, but he more than likely will be suspended in some way,
I,
shape, or
I
form.
I
if
pretty much
Mike,
would bet 100% that he's going to be suspended
Yeah,
some amount of
somehow,
games.
somehow.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas coming back too, though, that takes the underneath, so that helps Olave even more so because, towards the end of the season, he was getting a lot of pressure. He was on my team and he was getting a lot of pressure and not really having the best results. But I think having Michael Thomas running the underneath routes that he's kind of famous for and stuff can take a lot away from him. Um, Williams coming. I think that's just kind of a replacement for like a Mark Ingram type runner that they're used to having. And
Yeah.
like I agree with Zach, Kamara is a big question mark. I don't know that he'll be suspended for a full season, but probably a few games. But that's just my guess.
Sam, you're a Detroit guy, so you know about Jay Willie. What do you think his addition there is going to do?
I mean, he basically went out and said that like he felt disrespected by like the Lions offer, and I think he definitely has something to prove. I mean, he had a good season. I feel like a lot of teams just kind of underestimated Detroit, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens because that's like a slightly tougher division. Just I don't know in terms of the defense. The Bears had a down year. I mean, the Vikings were kind of fraudulent-ish, and then the
Yeah.
Packers. So I mean, I feel like that division's kind of more up and coming, but it also kind of opens the question of what the Saints are going to do with Taysom Hill now, because now, you don't use him as much as you did when you had Andy Dalton. So are they going to factor him in as a tight end? Are they still going to use him as a quarterback? Like, I don't know what they're actually going to do. So I still think kind of like what Zach said, the Saints are still a few years away from doing anything really. So
Yeah. And I didn't
I
even
just
think
We'll
about
put
get
one.
Taysom
into
Hill.
I hate
we'll get
Taysom Hill. Hate him.
We don't talk
we'll
about
get
him.
into it. We'll get into it later, but at
Hate
first
him.
I was really shocked that Detroit let Williams go. Like they didn't offer him anything, or I was really surprised. But now I see why.
Yeah.
We'll get into. Yeah, I was gonna say we'll get into that later, but yeah,
Yeah.
here's the thing: is Williams. a lot of his points last year, was it 17 touchdowns he had last
Yeah, it
year
was
rushing?
touchdown
So
based.
that's
Yeah.
kind of an anomaly. And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he's going to have the same success as he did last year. And yeah, Montgomery's a good replacement, but I don't know that he's the red zone. I mean, the most he's ever scored is 8. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's true.
I think Swift will still be their red zone guy.
now Swift's their middle of the field guy. He's the
Yeah, he's more of the pass catcher, but we'll see. We'll talk about that here in a little bit of that Montgomery addition too. But I agree with you all. I think you make a couple good points there. Same I hadn't thought of, like the defenses. Carolina's got a good defense. Atlanta's actually trying to stack their defense now. The Buccaneers usually have a pretty stout defense as well. So I think you make a good point about that. But you guys also mentioned Kamara being out for at least a few games, if not the whole season. So that right there, based on volume, can increase Jamal Williams' value in fantasy, especially in our league as well. But let's move on.
Hold on real quick, because this wasn't on your list, so I don't think you're going to talk about it. But while we're talking about this division, I'm not saying Super Bowl or anything, but watch out for Tampa Bay getting Baker Mayfield. I think that's a.
I think Louis is going to be really excited about that. He'll probably draft him in the beginning of the third round again, and then it'll all work out.
I'm just saying it's a good team. They have weapons, so we'll see. I mean,
they do have weapons. We will see how much Baker Mayfield matters.
we've derailed already.
Like I said, I understand he wasn't even on your list to talk about, so I get it.
I was not going to speak of the man. But it's a good addition to bring up because, yes, it does at least something. It's better than some of the other things that have happened. But now Derek Carr leaves Las Vegas to come to New Orleans. But now, that means Vegas had to make a lot of moves. And they've actually made a lot of moves. Some of them are departures and some of them are additions. So they basically replaced, Derek Carr with Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you guys feel like is that just an even toss up? Like, how do we feel about that? I see people shaking their head on that one. Andy, I'll let you start off on that.
I see that as kind of a neutral deal. I mean, yes, you have Davante Adams. They've added Mark Hardman. No, not Hardman. Who did
Jacoby
they
Myers?
Jacoby Myers. But here's the confusing thing to me: Jacoby Myers, and then you have the other kid there,
Hunter Renfrow.
Yes, thank you. I mean, they're kind of similar players, aren't they? I mean, very similar, and I don't see that as being a big help. They've got Jacobs on a 1-year contract. They're going to run his ass into the ground, and I imagine he might get hurt a little bit. But I don't know. I have questions there. And then Garoppolo usually misses 3 or 4 games, so I kind of see that as a neutral wash, so to speak.
Sure. Any other thoughts, gentlemen?
I'll chime in. I totally disagree, but I'm not saying that they're going to win a Super Bowl or anything either. I hate Josh McDaniels, so I think that makes a big difference. But something that people just do not give enough credit to is I'm not saying that he's the world beater either, but Jimmy G is a winner. He just wins games. That's when he does play, he wins, and they're a good team. I like the Jacoby Myers pickup because Davante's going to be getting doubled. That opens up the field for Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow. Now, I don't love that they let Darren Waller go. I was a little confused on that, but he's been kind of hit and miss on his health, so I kind of understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jacoby Myers will fill that void, but you still got Josh Jacobs. Like I said, you got Jacoby Myers now with Hunter Renfrow and Davante with Jimmy G. I think it's not bad.
Yeah. What about you, Sam?
I just think it's, again, I agree with kind of the lateral move, like what they gave up, what they got, they kind of end up in the same place. It'll be interesting to see what Jimmy G does, because if you look at the teams he's been on, the 49ers had literally nothing but weapons. And, some of the guys you listed off, Davante Adams, Josh Jacobs, that's a good team. But if you're guarding the 49ers, who are you going to double team on that? Because there's 3 or 4 options that are always going to be open, even if you double somebody.
Right.
the 40 or with the Vegas, you're always going to double Devontae Adams, like almost exclusively, right? And you lose Darren
Right.
Waller now. So obviously you get Josh Jacobs, but Josh Jacobs versus Christian McCaffrey, right? So it's like he still has weapons, but I feel like he has less dynamic weapons. Even when he was on the Patriots, like those teams they were machines. They just turned. So both the teams he's been on, literally plug any quarterback in there, not any quarterback, but you'll do well. So this is going to be like a litmus test to see, like, does he actually have the stuff?
Sure.
I don't disagree.
If I could tailcode on that is that, Las Vegas has done nothing to improve their defense, and that was a big problem.
I agree with that. I didn't mention that.
Jimmy Garoppolo, like Sam said, has had all these stars and everything. He's not known for putting up huge points. He's had games here and there.
Yeah.
And relies on the running game, which he has a stable running game. But I don't believe so much in the whole Las Vegas organization. And I think defense is what's going to let them down. And I don't think it might be good for fantasy. They might be trying to play catch up a lot, but I don't see him doing any better. I agree with what Sam said.
Well, so to give you just a small little background in what I'm saying is fantasy wise, we're doing this for fantasy. So that's what I'm saying. I just feel like Jimmy G will get some numbers. If he's healthy, he's going to put up 4,000 yards, 4,500 yards. He'll put up 25 touchdowns,
I think if they let him throw, he could do that. Yeah,
I'll take
but
the under.
it's going to be
You'll
on
take
health.
the under, huh? You think it'll be? You think
I'll
if
take
he's
the under.
healthy?
Yeah.
Health is a big thing. I totally get that. I
For
just
me,
don't know. I think he'll throw for 25 with that team. I think so.
Well, and for me, I think it actually hurts Devontae Adams. I don't think it's as neutral as we believe because Devontae Adams and Derek Carr already had a history, right? They went to the same college together and played. So that was already some chemistry there. But I think Derek Carr is better at the long ball than Jimmy G is. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if Jimmy G has never been looked to as that down the field thrower. And to
Yeah.
me, if you recall any of the Raiders games last year, there were so many plays that were just busted open by Devontae Adams where he's catching a ball 40 yards from the line of scrimmage at that point just because that's how it happened. And so I don't know how much that's going to happen, but I think it does lean into Josh Jacobs. You mentioned him on a 1-year deal. That's actually always usually a good thing in fantasy football as a running back that's on a contract year because that means that team doesn't care as much about him, and therefore they are going to run him a little bit more. You mentioned the exit of Darren Waller, which we can get into a little bit later, but are they going to run more 3 wide receiver sets because they got Myers and Renfro? Who knows what that does look like. But Renfro also had his health issues last year. If I'm not mistaken, he was concussed a couple times and maybe had another injury as well, if I'm not mistaken. But that could be, partly of that too. But those are definitely 2 teams that I felt made a lot of moves this offseason so far. And I think to a lot of our points, they feel very much same. It feels very much like don't get caught up in the hype of stuff. They're very much the same.
There I am, under 25 touchdowns and 4,300 yards. I'm just marking it down right now.
Okay,
Keep
so
that.
we got that. It's saved in the lexicon here, so we are ready to go. But while we are fantasy football, and as you mentioned, Zach, that's what we're here to talk about is more of the fantasy football impact. At the same time, we are also fans of teams, so I'd like us to go through a few of the teams that we're fans of. I'd like to start with the Bears because they made a huge offseason move that has a major impact. I know Sam, you're a Bears fan yourself from Chicago area. What do you think about the Bears and their moves so far?
Bears.
Bears. I like what they did. I don't like how everyone's been saying.
Do you mind explaining what they did? Because I didn't do a good job of setting that up.
I will. The only thing I don't like is that the pickup of DJ Moore, everyone on Twitter is basically saying that he would be the Bears franchise wide receiver in the one season he played with Carolina or something. So the Bears have taken ricochet shots up and down from this trade, but the trade was the first overall pick in this year's draft.
Hang on real fast. I'm confused what you're saying right there about what you mean about DJ.
So DJ Moore's stats for wide receiver would put him currently as the number 1 Bears wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
like-
you're saying you disagree with that?
No. I'm just saying, like, even though we make a good trade, the Bears are still getting shit on Twitter.
Oh, right. I got you. Got
yeah,
you.
agreed,
Got you.
agreed. But yeah, go ahead with what the trade
Okay.
was.
So-
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go
The
ahead.
Bears traded the number 1 overall pick of this year's draft to Carolina. In return, they got DJ Moore. They got the 9th overall pick, a first round draft pick in 24, and a second round draft pick in 25. So they got a pretty good haul. So
It was a good trade.
It was a good trade. So the interesting
I
thing
thought it was a fantastic trade.
is the Bears are really revamping their offense. So obviously the loss of David Montgomery to the Lions, right? We lose a pretty solid running back. But in return, we pick up Deontay Foreman and Robert Tonyan. So tight end Robert Tonyan and running back Deontay Foreman.
Don't forget Travis Homer.
Yeah, you got Homer in there too.
So
Pass
that's
catching.
what-
He's a pass catching back, just
Yeah,
like
and-
Herbert. So
He'll have
team that
Herbert.
doesn't throw passes to the running back.
yeah,
It might not matter anyway.
Yeah. So,
So-
Sam, what do you feel about the running back pickup? So, like, who do you feel will be on top of that? Like, does Foreman just come in and replace Montgomery, or do you feel like it shifts over to Herbert and Foreman's just there to kind of be the Jamal Williams and what he's supposed to do for the Detroit
Yeah,
Lions?
I mean, that's the second is what I kind of think. They're really opening up the offense for Justin Fields. So I think just having 2 backs there that are formidable, I think is good. But I think like Herbert started to kind of come into form a little bit last season. So I'm hoping he picks up most of the workload. And then we'll kind of see I don't even know, how old is Deontay Foreman?
he's like
He's up there now.
He's
Yeah,
probably
27.
27, 28.
That's it. That's amazing,
Something.
actually.
He's in his 20s. I think Herbert, as long as he comes back healthy, but he had a pretty good injury towards the end of the season. And if he comes back healthy, then yeah, I can see Herbert, Foreman being the power back, and then you got Homer is just nothing but a receiving back, basically.
So I listened to this podcast that has the Bears taking the 9th overall pick if he falls, being that running back. I think it's Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
Bijan out of Alabama.
Yeah. If that happens, that's your starting running back.
Yeah, I was gonna say if
Exactly.
that's the case, then we're not even talking about this because Bijan becomes the one. Yeah, that's true. Because if you're taking a running back that high in the draft, he's your guy.
Oh, absolutely. And he's supposed to be a stud.
Yeah.
He is a stud.
Right.
The only thing that would surprise me about that, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like so much of the offense runs through Fields. Like they seem to be willing, like, I mean, from what they're trying to do, to me, they're trying to do a Jalen Hurts type of move in a sense, right? Think about where Jalen Hurts was 2 years ago. They add a top end wide receiver, which if you don't know who DJ Moore is, yeah, it's almost unfortunate he's been in Carolina because he is a top tier wide receiver. Like that guy's a super talented player. So to me, it feels a lot like that. And they need a lot of help on their offensive line, which I know they grabbed, I think, Nate Davis from Tennessee Titans, and another lineman, if I'm not mistaken. But they're also trying to help with that. But it does feel like it's a much more towards Fields. Whereas if Bijan comes in, the way they're talking about this guy, he's Saquon-esque. I don't watch college football, so
that's why I think they would do it, and I think it helps their team. It helps Justin Fields a little bit because you have the weapons on the outside with Mooney and Moore. You've got the weapon with, if you get him, you got Robinson and Herbert. Again, I agree with Andy. I'm curious to see how Herbert's going to come back from that injury because it looked bad.
And that's a good point too, then, because then you're looking at it as Herbert's injured. Foreman technically tore his Achilles 4 years ago, so he's kind of like showing that you can come back from an Achilles injury, but it's very much north-south running. It's not, it's not a shifty runner. And so if you have more of an injured backfield, then getting Bijan would make a lot of sense. You still got Cole Kmet at tight end, who's a very good tight end. You really just got to strip your O-line. But they got so many holes in the defense as well. But yeah, definitely a team for us to look out for. So thank you for the update on that one, Samuel. Any other ones that you would add before I move on to another team?
I was just going to touch on Carolina real quick because I thought it was just interesting how they kind of swap some guys here. So obviously Carolina picks up the first overall draft pick, and then the big thing in the sports book is the Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud jumped to like odds-on favorite to be the first one off the board. Right. So Carolina has Andy Dalton now, which we talked about, Vegas moving him. But I didn't know this until I was looking. They picked up Matt Corral last year. He was one of the Ole Miss quarterbacks, and he was hurt for, I think he got hurt in the bowl game, and I don't think he played at all. But it's interesting that they picked him up, and now they have the first overall draft pick. So you're interested, like, are they going to end up going quarterback one to like be the guy, or are they going to give Matt Corral a shot? Are they going to shop it around? So it's just kind of interesting to see.
They will get a
I think
quarterback.
they're going quarterback.
You don't make that move unless you feel like you've got a franchise quarterback, I think.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But I see what you're saying, and Matt Corral could be an interesting move that people don't realize has happened, because Andy Dalton ain't the answer anywhere.
No, I know. He's a place filler.
Yeah. He's just so we have two quarterbacks on the roster, right?
Yeah. And then the last thing about Carolina is that they picked up Miles Sanders this year.
Yep, they did. And that's an interesting one too. I'd like to touch on that a little bit later because I think that has more impact than maybe we realize as well. But yeah, that was a big move right there, is getting Miles Sanders. Because then they lose Deontay Foreman. He goes to the Bears as well. So even though Deontay Foreman wasn't in the trade, Deontay Foreman was on Carolina, goes to the Bears as well. And then Miles Sanders ends up going over to Carolina at that point. But we'll touch on that here in a little bit. But it kind of leads into the Colts next. I'd love to talk about them because Carolina's going to go quarterback with that first pick. They gotta. And they're talking the second pick overall is going to be another quarterback. Colts have the fourth pick overall, and they've made a couple moves also during this offseason. Zach, what are your thoughts on what they're going to do with the pick and some of their moves in the offseason so far? True homer right there. Just true.
I don't.
I'm in the garage.
I don't want to beat them up too bad. I really don't. But none of the moves they've made make any sense to me at all. I don't understand why we picked up Gardner Minshew. I don't understand that.
Helps your quarterback room.
Yeah. I don't understand why we let Okereke walk for a 4-year, $40 million deal. That's a discount. You should have kept him you should have offered him the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, now wait a minute. You were the one that just said we're talking about this for fantasy reasons, and you're bringing in
he's bringing in defense.
Get back on track.
I am. Yes.
Excuse me.
Defense is part of our fantasy, isn't it? Or are we getting rid of defense? Okay.
Because they also lost another defensive player.
Right. And then trading Stephon Gilmore away. And not only did you trade him away, you got a 5th round.
I was going to say a 5th round pick. It wasn't really like.
And then you signed a punter, kicker, whatever you want to call him, to a 4-year, $22 million deal. And he's not even, it's not like he's Justin Tucker or.
Right.
So to your point, Andy, talking about the kicker, I think we're doing away with the kickers, right? We're not going to carry them anymore.
We did away with them.
Never did.
I'm sorry, but for a diehard fan, it's kind of like, okay, tell me you're tanking without telling me that you're going to tank. I don't know.
They also don't have Paris Campbell anymore. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. They picked up Isaiah McKenzie.
Yeah, I think McKenzie's better, to be honest with you.
Correct.
The Isaiah McKenzie pickup is mediocre at best to me.
Versus Paris Campbell, I think it's a wash.
Yeah, I would say it's a wash as well, because I actually think Paris Campbell is a better wide receiver than Isaiah McKenzie.
I get that, but what I'm saying from what I've seen, I'll take Pearson Doolin with a quarterback that's good. If it's some quarterback that's good.
Yeah, I do like Pierce.
You don't even need McKenzie.
Pittman is also there. You have Pittman who's also
That's
there.
what I'm saying. You start with Michael Pittman, you still have Alec Pierce, and you still have Doolin. I mean,
no, I feel you there, but we definitely need a quarterback. So do you think they're going to go with this Will Levis kid at the number 4 pick?
This is going to be out there, it's going to, so people can say what they want. If they draft Will Levis, we're going to suck for the next 5 years.
AJ Richardson.
You think so, huh? You're one of these.
I think he's a raw talent. I mean, look at his body size. you got Minshew for a year. Let the kid get used to the NFL. Let him start learning this shit. The guy's got body, size, speed, got a hell of an arm. He's a raw talent. Look at Josh Allen. He was a raw talent when he walked in to the NFL. I would go for Richardson in a heartbeat.
I'll give you this. I would rather have Richardson and his potential than Levis.
Correct.
At all.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I don't like either one. I think if we're going to get a quarterback, I think it needs to be Bryce Young. I don't think Bryce Young's going to last in the NFL. He's just 5'9" and a half and 180 pounds. Like
Sam, what are you going to say?
I mean, I don't know. I watched a lot of college football. I mean, Florida, they started the season off super high with the win over Utah, and then from there they just kind of teetered along.
That's what I'm saying. He's got a 54% completion percentage. Now they don't have, a track and field star of athletes there, but nor do we. We have Michael Pittman. That's what you got.
That dude does have an absolute cannon for an arm. Like, he is very Josh Allen-esque. Like, they're saying he just slings the ball around. But I don't know. Like, Will Levis was pretty tested at Kentucky, and they got into some shootouts. Like, I always kind of liked him. He was real gritty. Like, he's the like, hey, my finger's dislocated to the side. Like, all right, put it back in, tape me up. I got to go play the next set of downs. So, I mean, I liked him in college, but I mean, I guess like different systems. You think like Kentucky ended up being ranked for a while. They were pretty good. They had a really good O-line. So, I mean, we'll see.
And
but
to your point, he is very accurate. I think he was like 67.9% passing his college career. So he's pretty accurate. But if I want to look at an athlete, and I know it's a dart throw, but that's kind of where I'd go with Indianapolis. But Levis is probably the next best thing we're going to get. I would love to have Stroud. We're not going to get him probably.
Right.
But that's where we are.
Yeah. The main thing that it's hard to convince me to go with the prototypical guy anymore. The 6'4", what Will Levis is, 6'4", 230, 40 pounds, like big arm. Like, I don't see that winning anymore. Like, look at the NFL and the way it's going. That's not really the trend of the people that are winning now.
Well, look at Sam. He's got the trophy right there next to him.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough either way.
Who was your quarterback, Sam, all year?
Kirk Cousins.
So there you go.
I drafted Trey Lance, and he broke his ankle.
That's right.
I had Kirk Cousins.
That's right.
There. He did fine. It was good old Kirky.
Again, I'm just a diehard fan, and I'm not in love with any of them, really. I don't think C.J. Stroud's going to be that good. Maybe he will be. I don't know.
I think he'll be a good.
I'm waiting to see an Ohio State quarterback that's any good.
It's probably just a tough year to be able to take the third quarterback because there's no Patrick Mahomes being drafted as the third quarterback this year.
Right.
So I think it's tough to do that. But we'll get off the Colts. I know it's a heated debate.
That might be Richardson. That might be Richardson. If you remember, where did Patrick Mahomes come from?
Texas Tech, and he was in an aired-out offense. He is not an athlete. He is nothing like this man.
No, Patrick Mahomes was not even in the top 10 of possibilities of being drafted in that draft. Is what I'm saying. He was
drafted number 11, but he actually showed
but he wasn't.
He was an accurate quarterback in college. He threw the ball all the time in college.
What I'm saying is he wasn't even talked about like being.
Yeah, I get that.
One of the guys.
I'm not going to put Anthony Richardson into Mahomes.
Because Andy Reid is a guru. Okay.
Andy Reid is a guru.
We do like Andy Reid. I do like
real quick. Colts season win total opened on DraftKings 6.5. Are you taking the over or the under?
Under.
I'll take the 6.5. I think they'll have another tie.
I'm actually going to take. Yeah, right. I'm going to take the over.
I'll take 7.
And I'm taking the over because I don't think the Titans are very good. I don't think the Texans are very good. The Jaguars are the only people you have to compete with in the league. Now, they are good. But to me, I got 3 or I'm not saying the Colts are any good, but I'm saying.
Let me influence you just a little bit before you put this opinion out there.
Yeah.
if Houston drafts CJ Stroud, you all three just said you think he's going to be a stud. You don't think that they'll be better than us?
That's
Now,
true.
I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I think going back to your question about Gardner Minshew is legitimate, but I think I think they're gonna kind of slowly bring whoever they get into the program, and Gardner Minshew is going to play some games.
I'm not saying I
think
hate
that's-
that, but I don't understand.
No. I just think that's kind of the direction they're going. I agree with you, though. They need to get a stud quarterback that's
Yeah.
going to carry them for 10
Yeah.
years.
Yes.
And they can't make a mistake on this, but I understand their moves. But I would say that you're going to see some Minshew out there, Minshew mania in Indianapolis for a little bit.
Yeah, we probably don't win the 6 games. That's probably true because our defense has gotten worse. And I don't like
6.5.
that. They're only getting older, and they're what?
6.5.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I guess they don't get 7, so then we'll go there. But still
Okay.
brutal. So I'll
Over
take it back. I take it
half.
back.
I'm going on record.
All right, you're putting the over there. But we do have one more team I'd like to touch on as a team, and then we'll go into a few notable moves here. But the Cowboys have done a lot this year. I know Louis cares a lot about them. I'm sure
God.
maybe Kyle does too. I don't know who else cares a bunch about them. But Louis will care about it, so maybe he'll actually pay attention to this part of our podcast.
I am one of the people that care to hate them, if that matters.
Sure. I
Agreed.
can feel you on that. But Andy, I was hoping you might be able to talk to us a little bit about some of their moves.
I think they've obviously, the big score was Brandon Cooks as a wide receiver. I mean, Brandon Cooks has been 6 seasons, has had over 1,000 yards with 4 different teams. He's a very reliable quarterback. He's dealt with a lot of different quarterbacks. I mean, a reliable wide receiver with a lot of quarterbacks, but I think he will take some of the heat off of Lamb, so that opens both of them up a little bit. Plus, you got Gallup coming back. I know they're going to go with what the hell is his name? Just
Go,
escaped me.
Tony, go!
Yeah,
Go, Tony, go. Yep.
Exactly. I know they're going to go with him, but again, his injury, he broke his leg pretty severely late in the season. Now, I know they did add, who did they add to their roster?
They added Ronald Jones.
Ronald Jones is non-sufficient, and I know Zeke hasn't signed anywhere, and my gut feeling is they'll probably just re-sign him as a veteran minimum, because everywhere Zeke wants to go doesn't make sense. So he'll be a backup anywhere. But I think the main thing they did was Cooks, but then the other thing that I think makes them even more dangerous is they added Stephon Gilmore and a defensive lineman they added. And I think their defense is even going to be tougher than ever. And that's going to be a scoring defense, which we do count. And I mean, they haven't done a whole lot, but I think they've got a pretty solid start. I think they're going to do something in the draft to address the running back as well, because their defense is pretty solid. I know they need tight end. They let Schultz go. But I think they had a couple young ones underneath him that were probably able to step in. So I don't know how many wins they're projected for. I know they're talked about winning the East. It's possible. They got a good, strong team. And I think my prediction is I think Zeke Elliott will be back with them as a veteran pickup minimum and as a backup.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that one. So
you haven't heard that?
Take. That Zeke will be back with him?
Yeah, absolutely. As number 15.
I don't know, man. The Bengals seem like a good spot for him.
Yeah, he's changing his number 2 because Stephon Gilmore took 21.
They got Stephon Gilmore. What did they get at, like 2 first-round picks for that?
Number 5.
Good one.
Number 5 for Gilmore, wasn't it?
Yeah, so, it was a 5th rounder.
I was going to let Sam go, but since he wants to be a smartass, I'm going to jump in here real quick and just say, as I just told you, I'm a diehard hate Dallas Cowboys fan. I think they might just win the Super Bowl. I really do. Even if Dak's not healthy, I think what we saw from Cooper Rush last year and how well he plays, I think the addition of Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, both on offense and defense, is exactly what they needed. I
Yep.
think that's exactly what they needed. Losing Dalton Schultz is a little bit of a hit. I will admit that, but I don't think, what did he have last year? Make what 600, 700 yards maybe?
He was often
Did he-
injured. I don't even think it was that. I think it was like
Yeah.
400 something, 500,
Right,
something like that.
right. I mean, a rookie can come in and do that.
Well, I think they had flashes from like Ferguson and players like
Yeah,
that
Ferguson
too
was
that
good.
look
Yeah.
very
They did.
similar.
Yeah.
So I
But
agree. I think
I like it all, and I agree. I think Zeke's coming. That's what I'm hearing too. I think Zeke isn't going to go anywhere. I think he just going to take some less money, come back. He'll be number
Sure.
15.
I just felt
But
like
I
of the
like the
teams you
team.
mentioned, I thought Cincy would be a good fit for Zeke because they're in a sense potentially losing both running backs, P.
Yeah.
Ryan and Mixon, and so at that point, you need something.
They
Huh?
did lose P. Ryan. He's in Denver now.
That's what I'm saying, but they technically haven't
Yeah, but-
lost Mixon.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah.
about to.
I
But-
think they'll work that out.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But that could be, to me, that's the only other spot. To me, talking like the Jets, I'm like the Jets ain't taking them.
Right.
I
But
think there's one other.
I'll be
Eagles,
honest with
like Eagles don't.
At
need
this
them.
point, I think Zeke's wheels have kind of started running off a little bit. And we saw
Yeah,
that last year.
absolutely.
Just he doesn't have the pop that he used to have, and
Right.
I mean, he could be good at goal line stands, and he's a great blocker. But
Yeah.
I think as far as a breakaway runner, he's not what he used to be. So
Right.
Well, and you had mentioned some of the moves. You mentioned Brandon Cooks coming over from the Houston Texans, and Dalton Schultz went over to the Houston Texans, but we don't care much about that. However, the Houston Texans did sign Devin Singletary, and I only bring that up because Damian Pierce was really a standout rookie last year until he got hurt. Sam, you know this better than anybody. At one point, you had that three-headed and I believe even four-headed backfield for 1 week, and Damian Pierce was a big part of that. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on what Devin Singletary's addition to that team is going to do to either his own value or even Damian Pierce's value.
Well, since I'm some Colts specialist, I guess I'll say it real quick, and then these two can go. Again, I think it just depends on if they draft C.J. Stroud or not. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they have enough pieces at all to do anything. So the problem is like, yeah, Singletary may get a whole bunch of touches. So for fantasy wise, he may be pretty good. But I mean, what are they projecting the Texans win total this year? You know, they were the worst team in the league until that Hail Mary, which sent the Bears the first pick. But, you know, Damian Pierce was good in the league because he was getting so many touches in our points per carry league. That's why he was so good, right? And so, you know, Singletary he was the Buffalo back, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
He was their main back.
I mean, Buffalo had a terrible run game, and so I think he'll do better in Texas with the Texans, but just the team overall, I mean, I don't think much.
It's a 1-year deal. So it's not
exactly. Here's my deal: is it's just a 1-year deal. I don't know if we know how healthy Damian is after his injuries as well, and it's just insurance, and he might be starting the year and everything, but he's never been over 800. He's never been over 1,000 yards in the whole time he's been with Buffalo. It was always around 900, but that's not bad. But he also had turnover issues, but he also missed 3 or 4 games every season, it seemed like, looking back at his last few years.
He's also tough playing with Josh Allen. I mean, it's kind of like a guy we're going to talk about here in a moment, Miles Sanders, who played with Jalen Hurts. Well, when Jalen Hurts is running the ball all the time, it's kind of tough to get touches for the running back as well. But I think to your point, Sam, the main thing it does is take away touches from Damian Pierce because when you're drafting, unless a guy has a track record for always being injured and you just say, hey, I don't want to take on that risk every year, we don't often think about injury coming into the factor of us drafting a player. But I will say losing touches will, and to your point, Lovie Smith was all about handing the ball off. And that was really helpful in our league when you're getting 0.2 per carry and he's getting 20 carries and you already got a baseline of just 5 points right there just because he touched the ball that many times. So it does impact us there. I guess it's 4 points. I'm off of my
And where is Lovie Smith this year?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably U of I again, coaching them. Who knows?
How's that relevant?
the Bears Hall of Fame for calling a Hail Mary with the season on the line.
So I'll clap back as they were talking about Lamar to Andy. That matters because they don't have Lovie Smith, a guy who's going to run the ball a bunch. So when you're thinking about Dameon Pierce and thinking of, oh man, he did so well last year. Well, they don't have Lovie Smith this year trying to force the run all the time, and they got Devin Singletary now, so he may fall down. I'll be honest, he'll fall down my board. Like it won't be as high as what he could have been.
If I was going to draft Sanders, it'd probably be 4th, 5th round as a low RB2, RB3.
Are we getting Miles Sanders already?
You're talking about Miles Sanders?
I thought that's who you were talking about.
No, we're
yeah,
talking
I
about
agree.
Dameon Pierce still. Okay, but hey, good
Singletary.
segue.
I
Good
agree
segue.
I agree with Andy.
I apologize. Singletary. Excuse me. I got ahead of myself.
Which
Sorry,
part do you agree with Andy on? The Miles Sanders stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
That's gonna be the flop of all the flops.
You think Miles Sanders will be? Why
Yep.
do you think that?
I think he benefited from Jalen Hurts.
From
That's it.
their offense being good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
They had the best offensive line, or were they 2?
Yep.
I think they were 1. I think they were the best offensive line in the league. If not, they were number 2. I know they were 1 or 2. And you got Jalen Hurts, who is a threat. Didn't he rush for 1,000 yards?
Something like that.
Jalen Hurts? Yeah.
Yeah. Taking a lot of touches away from a man who could have run the ball.
I don't know. Ask Bob. He had him. He was right across from you.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Well, he's gone. He left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Andy? Because you were like, hey, I'm thinking 4th or 5th round. What does that put him at for running back? Is that like the number 20 running back at that
Who
point?
are we talking? Because I was talking
Miles Sanders. Now we're talking about Miles Sanders. Okay.
Now we're on Miles Sanders. I still think he's about the same range as Singletary. I wouldn't take him till. I think with Carolina he has more opportunity, but I still see him as RB2. Round 4 or 5, somewhere in that range. Looking for him. He has injury issues as well. I mean, he's hit and miss. But I agree with you. I think getting away from Philadelphia is going to be good for him because it'll give him more opportunities to run. Depends on what quarterback they go for. So
True. Any thoughts on it, Sam?
No. I mean, at this point,
No.
It's tough. Yeah, you can predict 7 different ways, and you just don't know who's going to, like you said, you don't know who's going to take over the offense. You don't know, quarterback situation in Carolina. There's just, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I think you're downplaying Carolina's offensive line because when you say that Philly might have been second, it may have been to Carolina. Look back, their offensive line stats, I think they're at least top 5 offensive line in the league.
Let you know.
Yes, sir. So that's where I actually think is going to be a beneficial. I don't think he's actually missing a step with the offensive line, and he's in.
I don't think Carolina's offensive line was up that high.
Oh yeah,
I don't think so.
I think they were.
Actually, they were one of the top offensive lines in the league last year, and they actually had. Think about they had actually a when McCaffrey left, they were still rushing the ball like crazy with a Deontay Foreman and who else? Some other scrub.
Chuba Hubbard.
So there you go. 2 guys that are so running backs. Miles Sanders.
No, I tried to tell you they're not so. I tried to tell you that Chuba Hubbard was decent. I tried to tell you he was good.
I would
you're
put Miles
also
Sanders
talking-
above
listen,
both of those players.
And you also lost DJ Moore. You have no weapons now. You
That
have
to me
Terrence
would be the only
Marshall
part.
Jr. and
Adam Thielen,
and Chenault Jr.
DJ
Oh yeah, I
Chark.
forgot they got Thielen. Oh, sorry.
All right, here's what I found. So what Pro Football Network has Carolina as the 13th ranked this upcoming year. Rookie left tackle last year. Austin Corbett was their guard, but he tore his ACL. Left guard Brady Christensen may not be ready for the start of the 2023 campaign, and their center's a free agent.
Oh, so that might be rough then. But last year they had.
I don't know
one of
about
the
last
best
year. It
lines.
was like Eagles and Chiefs were like top 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I
but
was
you can still
saying.
look it up. I will put money on it. They were still
Dr.
a
Cam.
top 5 rushing offensive line. Like they had one of the top attacks for rushing, and that was without Christian McCaffrey. That was after
We're
McCaffrey.
we're digressing.
We're digressing, but I actually think the opposite. So I'm off on that one. We have a few other running back moves.
Hang on. We want your opinion too. You're the opposite. Like, you think the Miles Sanders thing is good?
I think Miles Sanders will be better for fantasy than he's been. But it is, I agree with Andy. Health has been a concern for him throughout the years as well. I I see what you're saying, and I don't know if it's so much a wash, especially in our league where he'll get more touches, and that matters in our league. Because from what you're saying, Zach, that's a big deal, which is being a part of a good offense, right? Being part of an
Yep.
offense is going to move the ball, going to score. Jamal
Mhm.
Williams, he was able to score a bunch of touchdowns, right, to make him fantasy relevant. So to your
Yeah.
point, that makes a ton of sense for me. So it could end up being a wash. I just don't think I definitely don't think it's a downgrade. And I think it has more potential to be an upgrade because he'll get more touches. And apparently,
Gotcha.
I'm ignorant to his offensive line, the offensive line not being good anymore. But I'm telling you, last year they were a top, at least on the rushing side, they were a top offensive line
Gotcha.
for it.
I don't
They
know.
were
I'm not
good.
seeing them on any
Yeah.
of these articles.
What?
I'm not
Okay.
seeing them on any of these articles.
Okay. Well, it's not about articles. Anyways, we have a few other running backs to touch on. I was hoping to get Andy is fired up about some of these, but I was going to ask you about Montgomery to Detroit because you actually had the Montgomery Herbert stack last year,
I
if I'm not
did.
mistaken.
And you know what? I think I think it's kind of a neutral to positive kind of a move because he's only the most he's ever scored is 8 touchdowns rushing in any season he's played with Chicago. So he's not the goal line rusher. Everybody thinks he is, like Williams was last year when he went crazy. But you also got Swift there, but Swift is injury prone, if I can say that. They also have, is it Jefferson? Who's that running back they have that isn't too bad?
Oh, Raymond? Is it not Raymond?
Let me see. Craig Reynolds. Craig
Yeah.
Reynolds, and they have Jamar Johnson. Those are the two I was thinking about that are young guys that could step in. So I think it's kind of a wash. I think he's still a good running back. Again, he'd be an RB2 for me at best. But
Talk about a good
there's
offensive line. Detroit Lions
doesn't-
actually have a good offensive line.
That's true.
I know
that is true. But you know,
because the
they
Bears,
also-
I think, are the worst. If I'm not mistaken, the Bears are like 32nd or 31st
They
last
were.
year. So
last year they were like 31st, 32nd. I mean, Houston, Chicago, it's all the same. But yeah, I think you got some good changes here. The ones that kind of, we were talking about Pirine earlier. He went to Denver, and we don't know about Javonte Williams, and he had a severe injury.
Yeah.
And like you and I have talked before, Greg, and Dr. Sam can probably tell us about it, but I think it takes a couple years for them to really return to full strength. And I could see Pirine being a lead back for a while, especially since they're going to look like they're going to try to get their passing core up. But you got Pirine, you got Damian Harris went to Buffalo, but I think that's a crowded backfield with Cook and Hines already there, although they're kind of different backs. I think Williams going to New Orleans will be a good move. But Montgomery, I don't know. But again, we talked about Zeke earlier. We don't know where he's going to land. My gut feeling is he'll be back at Dallas. But then there's another one. Is Kareem Hunt still out there? Rumor has it that if Austin Eckler does want the trade from Los Angeles Chargers, that Hunt might go to the Chargers. But if he goes to another team, you got an RB1 right there. I mean, granted, he's 27, 28 years old, but he's been in a committee with Chubb to where he's not gotten a ton of miles on him. So
true.
That's somebody to look at too. I really think the big bang is going to come when we also got Penny went to Philadelphia, which that one kind of confounds me because he's only played 18 games in the last 3 seasons. And yeah, they were good games, but he's just prone to it. I would keep my eye on Kenneth Gainwell in Philly. I think he's a better, more steady person to have. But I think when you come to the draft is where we're going to be seeing some shakeups in the RBs.
Yeah, definitely. That's very true.
That's just my unprofessional opinion.
That reminds me. So when he said about like the ACL injuries and all that stuff like that, just leg injuries, that's a good little fantasy tip. We've talked. I know, Greg, you've talked about it before, just in terms of guys coming back first year, second year. J.K. Dobbins, I think this year is going to be really good, depending on what happens with Lamar Jackson, because you could tell at the end of the year he was still not like taking off like he should be after an injury. And I think just a long off season, he'll be a lot more viable as a running back this year. So that's a good thing to think about just in terms of when the draft comes along, is like, where are guys at in terms of injuries? Like, are they going to be first year, second year off of an injury and get that like uptick in usage and actually cutting and running?
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe something
Lamar ain't playing for the Baltimore Ravens.
Probably not.
Ooh, big conspiracy there was they were saying that they might nobody might touch him, just to say that you need to get an agent. Like they might be like kind of blackballing him a little bit because he's his own agent, and then they might just put him on the unrestricted, was it not the franchise tag, it's something.
No, they already did it to him. They did like it's like
unrestricted free agent tag is so you can bid on him. Yeah.
And they still get compensation with draft picks if somebody does sign them.
2 number ones.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, so that's a big deal.
That's my third note, draft J.K. Dobbins.
Okay. Well, I think another one to look at, oddly, because of the move, is the Buccaneers let go of Leonard Fournette. And so to me, it means Rachaad White becomes a viable running back in fantasy, or more viable at least. We'll see. They might tackle that in the draft probably as well, I imagine. But yeah, they let go of Leonard Fournette, so that there goes more touches for Rachaad White in that offense.
Well, while we're talking about
running backs, Baker Mayfield.
While we're talking about running backs, I do want to add one thing. I am hearing that Buffalo is trying so hard to get Derrick Henry. So
the Yeti trying to get him to he does well in the snow.
And apparently Tennessee wants to trade him. They're listening to offers for him.
Well, yeah, because they need to. They're not going anywhere right now. He's at the back end of his career, and therefore, if you're going to get any value, it's going to be this year or none.
Yeah.
So I'd agree with that. That's pretty good one. Yeah. Some other getting kind of away from the running backs. I know that's a big deal, and I think you mentioned it in the draft. I think they tackled a lot, because with these running backs, you'll find that they just don't. And Andy, you mentioned it with Kareem Hunt. The amount of tread on those tires is something that NFL teams always look at now, even in the college ranks. You don't have the very many Derrick Henrys in this world that can keep chugging along, getting 300 plus carries every year and still do it. So that is where, and we'll do another podcast, I think, around that time after the draft and see what we think about all the stuff then too. But we have other stuff outside of the running backs that happen, and some of them have been mentioned already. And some maybe just moot points that don't mean anything. But I know Juju Smith-Schuster signed a 3-year deal with the Patriots. Did anybody think that matters? Is that a big deal?
No.
Yeah.
Unless Lamar Jackson goes to New England, it doesn't matter.
Okay, that's a good point. So if Lamar Jackson goes,
I don't even think it matters, even if Lamar does go there.
Yeah, it becomes, especially in our league. Our league is a half point per reception, and he's more of a PPR style of player because he's not, he's in the bottom of athleticism.
He could be a PPR player if he would catch the ball.
Right.
He drops.
We got another Tage sighting.
Tage,
yeah. Tage, what do you think about Juju? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. So I mean, sign Juju. Everybody else, go ahead and sign Juju. You drafted him.
Yeah.
That's all right, Tage.
Yeah. Yeah. Thumbs up. Yep. All right. Love you, girl. Have a good night. Say good night to everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Hugs.
Hi.
You all got your Tage hug now. All right, love you, girl. But yeah, I don't think that one. It's a big contract. I was surprised at the contract. I'll say that, but I don't think it means anything. And they lost Jacoby Myers, and I feel Jacoby Myers is better than Juju. So like, why couldn't you give that contract to Jacoby Myers? Anyway, and he already knows the system, so I don't understand the move whatsoever. So I don't think that's anything. A couple before I get into the one that I know Zach is really interested in. So I'm going to do a couple more before I get into that. Darren Waller went to the Giants. You had mentioned Darren Waller earlier, leaving the Raiders, going to now the Giants. So he's going to basically team up with Daniel Jones as the quarterback over there. What do we feel about that move?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I think it's good.
I saw Daniel Jones play with Evan Ingram, and he wasn't very good. So
that's true. But
neither was Evan Ingram at that time.
Waller's better than Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram was pretty good.
He was good this past year. This is the first year Evan Ingram was good.
Evan Ingram's always had that talent, though, is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they didn't utilize his talent because they have Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones has gotten better, though. You got to think, I think, Brian Dable has been a good coach, man. I think he's proven that he can work with quarterbacks. He did it to Josh Allen. Josh Allen was, this Anthony Richardson guy, right?
How many yards did he throw for last year?
Who? Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
872.
Not very many.
Yeah,
I think it was under 3,000. It was like 3,000.
Yeah, right. How many touchdowns? How many touchdowns did he have?
20.
Okay, we're done talking about it.
I get what you're saying. However, tell me the weapons he had, and I think that's where I'm going. Where I'm going with
3,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
15.
Here's where I'm going with it. Here's where I go. Who did he have to throw to? He never once had a full
Sterling Shepard, Saquon Barkley.
Sterling Shepard for what? The first 2 games, and then he was out for the year.
And they have another wide receiver.
Don't throw Saquon Barkley into the mix of players he has to throw to. Technically, yes, but he's the running back.
Saquon Barkley to throw the ball to.
Yeah, but he's the reason that you'd only throw for 3,000 yards. If you kept throwing to Saquon Barkley, you're only going to get 3,000 yards.
Okay, they had another wide receiver.
Wan'Dale Robinson was good. Wan'Dale Robinson was good for a few games, and then he tore his ACL, was done.
Darius Slayton.
Kenny Golladay has been
Slayton.
And he's not even a good receiver. So my point would be Darren Waller becomes the number 1 option in New York at that point for throwing the ball.
I agree.
For a quarterback who's going to throw it short. He does well with a Sterling Shepard. When Sterling Shepard's healthy, like that's actually a good wide receiver to have. He's actually a really underrated fantasy wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But that's where Daniel Jones does shine. He's not the greatest at the deep ball. He's not going to throw down. But guess where Darren Waller's going? 5 yards and out.
He's going in through the middle.
So
here's a couple.
Okay, so you can prove me wrong. How many touchdowns is Darren Waller getting of the 15 that Daniel Jones is going to throw?
No, hold on. Go ahead, Sam. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say Darius Slayton only had 2 touchdowns last year, so I think
his quarterback only threw 15. That's
hang on a second.
They don't
really were a running team. He also had 708 yards rushing last year. That's pretty healthy. Number 1. Number 2, he had his highest QBR rating at 92%, least amount of interceptions that he's had in his entire career. He was a 67% completion percentage. So, I think he's showing improvement. And if you looked at his stats each year, he's improved in a lot of areas. So you get some talent around him, maybe he'll do better. I don't think he's any worse than... I'll be honest, I'd have a tough time picking between him and Derek Carr.
That's true for that rushing upside.
If you're talking like fantasy, you have him like he's obviously not a tier 1 runner. He's not a Jalen Hurts or a Justin Fields, but he's pretty consistent. Like he's not
tier 2 at that point, right?
Yeah, like he's not going to hurt you. Like he's not going to be a guy that's going to turn the ball over a whole bunch. And like to the point of what we're talking about, like Darren Waller's a good addition for that offense because now. Again, like Evan Ingram, Darren Waller, in my opinion, I think Darren Waller's better than Evan Ingram. But with the weapons we talked about, if they end up keeping Saquon and they add a second back there, like they're viable. They made it to the playoffs. Didn't they knock off Minnesota last year?
Yep.
And And that's like Kirk Cousins, and that's, I mean, obviously Kirk Cousins is meh, but like, Justin Jefferson is like the best wide receiver in the game, right? And so what's the difference if you have the number one wide receiver, you got like a few average guys like you can chuck the ball to?
I think I would rather have him than Russell Wilson. Let me just state that, okay?
Yeah. Well, this wasn't going to be about Daniel Jones, but I just think Waller become the number one option for an outlet. And I think for the tight end position, like to me, that's valuable. Like I think he has a valuable role. However, can he stay healthy? I don't know about that. Like he's just getting older. And to Zach's point before about being in a good offense, oftentimes you want a tight end that's in a good offense because you're getting near the goal line a lot more than potentially they were. So I can see where Zach's coming from with the thought. I just feel like he automatically becomes the best option they got to throw to, which to me is a big deal. All right, one more before I get to Zach, because I know he's going to want to talk about him. I'm actually bringing up a guy, and this has nothing to do with free agency, but what do you think of Calvin Ridley and that addition for the Jacksonville Jaguars next year? Do you think that has any impact? Do you think he's going to be impactful himself? Do you feel like it just helps, Trevor Lawrence become a more impactful quarterback? Like, what's your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a good addition. I mean, you still got Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. That Agnew came in at the end of the year. Okay, Zach, you got Evan Ingram there as the tight end.
He did well. He was
so. I mean,
tight end.
I think you got a good receiving core there. I think there's plenty of balls thrown. Trevor Lawrence is up and coming, and he's gotten better every year. So I think it's a good situation for Calvin Ridley. You guys better watch your gambling. It'll get you in trouble. I'm just telling you. Little $1,500 bet on a parlay get you booted for a year.
Yeah.
They get to play the Colts 2 times a year, so.
Guess what?
They get to play the Colts 2 times a year, so that's a touchdown.
There's at least 2 wins.
There's 2 wins.
They'll be the AFC South Division winners.
Yeah.
They're going to be really good. I'll be honest with you. I love Calvin Ridley coming back to their team, but if I was them, I'd almost see what I could get for him.
Sure.
Just because he is a stud. Like I think he comes in as their number one, but that's kind of the problem. How well they did last year, and it was only Trevor Lawrence's second year. I mean, I think they're just going to get better. I think you could probably trade him and get some stuff right now for him. Like I would love to have Calvin Ridley on the Colts.
Yeah, and I agree with you because he was like the year before the debacle really happened. He was like
the number one.
Yeah, I think number 1 or 2 guy, something like that. Yeah. And for me, I would agree. So I mean, I think that helps.
In fantasy points, he was number 1.
Yeah. And so I think he opens up that offense even more because he's also a big downfield threat.
Right.
He was that for the Falcons. And so for me, it's definitely a huge boost for Trevor Lawrence. So, that's a good quarterback to even look at kind of as an up-and-comer, as Andy had said. But Calvin Ridley, another guy to add to that offense, and an offense that, like you said, throws the ball. I mean, they got a lot of weapons now. So we'll see.
I think they win 11, 12 games this year. I think they're going to be a real good team. Real good.
They have a good defense too. They have a pretty solid defense.
They have a stud defense.
They have a very good defense.
Yeah. So that'll be a good team to watch this year. And unfortunately for the Colts, they are much better at this point in time and have their franchise quarterback that we do not.
Yeah.
So kind of tough on that end. But I do want to get into the final one. Talk about Miami. So Miami made a big move, at least one big move. And I know you're. Andy, I'm going to get to you second because you're a big Dolphins fan as well. But I know, Zach, this is one that you wanted to talk about. So I'll let you have the floor.
I mean, it's not that a lot of things change, but I think that they are going to be the team to beat this year. I think the Mike White addition as the backup quarterback is huge. I think that was gigantic. So now if Tua doesn't play, now you have a bona fide backup where I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is that,
Right.
I love that they sealed up
Mostert. and most
Most
of
that was huge.
Raheem Mostert.
It sounds like they're done with Gesicki. So, I mean, I don't think he's fantastic, but I do like Gesicki. So I'm
he
kind of
went to the
wondering.
Patriots now.
Yeah, but they have what Smythe or Smith or
Yep.
so he's kind of young and good, and obviously I'm just such a fan of Jalen Waddle. That kid is just unbelievable good, and you put him with Tyreek Hill. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just they're just going to get better and better. And like I said, I love the team with Tua for sure, but I think it's even a positive if Tua can't play and you have to go to Mike White.
Yeah. Agreed. Andy, what do you think as a Dolphins fan?
Well, I think the biggest pickup they made was Braxton Berrios, that you like Greg so much. That
Hey
helped
man,
you.
PPR monster when he's
I
playing.
joke, but I mean, they have a solid receiving core. They had Cedric Wilson and stuff, but I'll tell you where, if, and I'm just wishing as a Dolphin fan, if they happen to pull it off and get Lamar Jackson, this will be a tough team to beat. Tua
I
is
will
good.
give you that. I haven't
but
heard anything about that, but that would be interesting.
Tua is he's one more concussion away from being done. And
I agree.
Yeah.
my biggest concern.
Yep.
But I mean,
Speaking
if
of
they
that,
would
how's their
Lamar
O-line?
in any, I'm sorry.
How's their O-line? Is it any
I don't
good?
think it's very
It's-
good. I think it's like bottom.
substandard.
I think it's I think it's bottom of the teens. I think
Yeah,
they're like
it's one of the-
16 to 18, something like that.
Yeah, he's scrambling, and that's the thing is the O line's not that good. Defense is great. I'm not worried about their defense, but
That's interesting you say that. I haven't heard one thing about Lamar going there, and you're right. That would be interesting. That would be interesting.
But they did pick up Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey's a good. Yeah, like I said, their defense is great, and they have a good back five.
Yeah.
So they can defend the pass well, but like Sam brings up, their offensive line's horrible.
I was gonna say, what would you rather have, Lamar Jackson or Tua / Mike White with a good O line?
Well,
I'd rather
have a good O line because I think with Mostert and Wilson, you got some decent running backs.
Yep.
I mean,
So I'd rather have the O line.
They got names there for sure, but it's just a matter of, I mean, you got to protect Tua, and obviously that one hit kind of a,
Yeah, and I mean, as he's shown, I mean, it's one hit away from him being and I hate to say that, but it's true.
No,
Up and down look pretty good. I agree. I think losing Gesicki, the tight end's not a big deal. I think they're fine there. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I like them. I think they're going to be a really, really, really good team.
I agree with that as well. And I bring up the Jalen Ramsey thing because they're kind of doing what, in a sense, the concept that the Colts had when they had Peyton Manning, which is we're going to get on top of people so much they're going to have to throw.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, they're getting players that cause turnovers. And so when you think about for fantasy football purposes, that's the defense that you're going for. We're really not going for technically a defense that keeps people under 10 points. You're going for a defense that causes a lot of turnovers. That's why the Dallas Cowboys are usually a big defense to have, because it's not like they're always shutting people down. It's just more of they cause a lot of turnovers. So to me, I like the Ramsey addition because you already have Xavier Howard. So you have two cornerbacks that are studs, and their safeties are both studs, if I recall, as well.
Right.
So I think, as you mentioned, their back five is really good. So I like that addition as well. But that is going to be a tough team. You've got Eagles that are going to still be a tough team, even though they've lost some pieces, but the Eagles will be tough. Cowboys, as you mentioned before, are going to be a tough team to beat. We mentioned the Jaguars being another good team. And as we get to the draft and through the draft, we'll see if there's any additions that are made to make some other teams even more viable, because it does matter in fantasy how good your offense is, because that creates more scoring opportunities. And therefore, when you have players on teams that provide more scoring opportunities, it just helps that player who may be mediocre become above that as well. So finding kind of the diamonds in the rough. But that's kind of wrapping up some of the stuff that I had on my list for free agency and what the podcast was meant for. Do you guys have any teams or any players you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Yeah. Two quarterback things. Sam Darnold to the 49ers.
So why are we talking about it?
I don't know. It's just weird.
Weird.
Move.
I agree.
weird.
No, I agree with Sam. It is weird. I don't know why they did that.
But in terms of who you're looking at, right? Like, is Trey Lance going to be back after the broken ankle? Brock Purdy, I don't even know if he got his surgery yet.
Yeah, he did, but is he going to be back for the start of training camp and see? No.
But then you're thinking, like, in terms of fantasy, you're thinking like, okay, McCaffrey probably more touches, but also like Kittle, and you're thinking like all the other offensive guys.
Sure.
Are they going to get like who's is Sam Darnold throwing the ball? And again, like that's kind of a system offense where it's like, can you really just plug and play anybody in there to run the offense? But just in terms of fantasy points wise.
Yeah,
Right.
no, that's true. That's a good point. It makes me wonder, like, what are they doing with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy? Who do they have actual faith in for the year? So that'll be a good QB room to look at if you're looking to draft players from that. Usually we at least have a backup quarterback on our teams, right? So you're looking to have, if we get 12 teams this year, we're at least having 24 quarterbacks probably taken in our draft, and therefore that means most NFL teams will have a quarterback on our team.
Yeah, like Zach stashing away Deshaun Watson last year.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hey, you're already giving people pointers, man. We don't need that name thrown out there, man. Everybody stay away from Deshaun Watson. He likes to get touched. Don't mess with him.
We'll do.
He's right up your alley there, Zach. I just got
trust me,
Sam's got one more because you said two. So
the only one we didn't talk about, which hasn't actually happened yet, is the cheesehead himself, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about him. I just hate them so much. I don't want to fucking talk about him.
Yeah, because I'm tired of hearing about it, and I'm tired of seeing this prima donna. Never mind. I'll stop there. I'm over it.
That leads me to one of my players. What happens to Alan Lazard?
I was just going to say.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't go there. Is he just out in nowhere's land now?
Right.
So that was one of my players.
Actually, there is one thing I didn't want to say this, but I do now. There is one thing that affects all of that you just mentioned that I could not believe. The Jets trade Elijah Moore.
Yep. Helps your Deshaun Watson. Helps Deshaun Watson, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It helps that entire.
Like I said, guys, don't draft Deshaun Watson. He had a bunch of women touch him. He's not worth the trouble. Just leave him alone. Don't bother drafting him.
So going back to the one other one, Greg, I have for you is to be aware of is that Atlanta signed Jonnu Smith as a tight end. And the only reason I point him out is because Pitts is there. So
yep.
You might want to stand clear of that one.
I will say, because I want to say Pitts got hurt and was out for the year. Was he out for the year? Like before Ritter took over?
No, he's just a bad pick.
Yeah, it turned out to be that way. Man, what a talented – that could be a big waste of talent.
Is Ritter the guy there? Is he going to be the guy? Is Ritter
Desmond Ritter?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ritter.
So far.
Yeah, you didn't see what Arthur Blank came out and said today?
Yeah, about Lamar Jackson? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely Ritter.
Yeah. And I don't mind that. I mean, their team isn't – no offense to their team, but they're not anything special right now anyway. So – to me, if you're getting Lamar, it's because you plan to win. I plan to win this year or next year.
That's why I didn't understand why they traded Calvin Ridley.
Didn't Mariota go to the Eagles?
He did. He's now the Eagles' backup quarterback. Was Mariota for that one. Geno Smith signed back with the Seattle Seahawks. I think that's
okay.
You could say whatever. That's kind of a big deal. I mean, he had a great year last year. He was probably undrafted. I think he was undrafted.
If I said it once, I'll say it twice. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin got a quarterback to throw to him.
Here's what I'll say. If Baker Mayfield is taken over Geno Smith, that will be the day. Do you think that? All right, let me ask you that. Do you think Baker Mayfield will be a better fantasy quarterback this year, this upcoming year, than Geno Smith?
Oh God. I don't know. I don't
Because I think to your point,
Sure.
yeah, sure,
Sure. I'm gonna say yes. I'll say yes. If they're healthy the same amount.
Yes, I'll have Baker under Geno.
Oh, you think Baker is?
I don't have a lot of confidence in Geno.
Hold on. So is Baker going to be better than Geno? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Sure, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now Sam, break it up. You said yeah.
I'm gonna say yes. He's in a make it or break it year for his contract, for his
Yeah.
career, essentially. Geno just got
Yeah.
the money. I think the Buccaneers defense is better than the Seahawks defense. Ready to go back there.
Good points. I'm gonna go with Geno, so we're all split 50-50. Hey Nana.
Hey, Andy.
Hang on
All
a
right,
second.
Tell Joanne that
Oh,
you'll
man.
call her right back. Tell Joanne you'll call her right
I'm
back.
trying. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do.
We're wrapping up anyway, right?
But yeah, we're wrapping up. We went a little long on this podcast,
You think
but
anybody learned anything?
probably not. We probably rambled on a bunch. It was
Just a
really
bunch of
more
guys
for
yelling at each other about.
Did we
Baker
waste your
Mayfield.
time, Sam? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I had a
admire
blast. I
your
had
trophy.
I had
I'm
nothing
just
else
trying
to
to
do.
figure out where I'm going to put that next year.
yeah.
Listen, all right. There's a spot
I
here.
like
Nice
it.
trophy.
Yeah, I'll put my name on there soon.
Hey, question: does the next year go underneath it, or does it go to the side of it?
Well, I think you need to just put as many on there as you can put.
Well, you do, but you gotta choose.
Like-
Does 20?
Like I said, that's why you need a
I
belt.
just-
I think if it's my name, you got to put it side to side so you can see that. But if it's somebody else, you can just put it below and just.
Oh,
I
got it.
think if somebody else wins it this year, we take a nail and scratch out Sam's name and put the new plaque on there.
Uh,
And then the next year, we scratch out that person's name and put the new person's name on.
Yeah.
Listen, Greg was. If you learned anything from this, Greg was talking about. I don't even remember who it was. It was like 45 minutes ago. Somebody moving down their board, and I just go back to the fact that I literally texted you like 3 hours before the draft, trying to figure out what the point system was for this league. So if you learned anything from all this stuff, none of it matters.
right.
That's true.
But we
All
do
right,
have
guys, I
coming
gotta
up
jump
for
off
the
here.
summer. We do
Yep.
have to discuss any changes.
Sorry.
We will do that. Do not worry. But we're gonna stop the recording. Thank you guys for doing this with us. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Zach's gonna hop off.
Yeah, I'll see you guys. Bye, everybody.
Much love.
Yeah.
Much love.